Hello everyone. Welcome again to the YouTube channel. And today we have a very special guest with us who doesn't need any introduction from me. I'm sure all of you have met him on multiple platforms where he has been a top educator in the UPSC civil services exam space for almost a decade now. Welcome Atish on the YouTube channel. Atish has taught with Unacademy. He is one of the, legends, as the Unacademy calls them. He has been a top educator with Vajiram Ravi. He's been a top educator with Next IAS. If there's one educator when you go into this space that is instantly recognizable, be it because of the quality of his teaching or be it because of his salt and pepper beard. So that is, I think, Atish. So welcome, and how are you doing today?
I'm good, and it's the salt and pepper beard. It's a lot more to do with the salt and pepper beard. And thank you, Bijit. And I must very honestly tell you that there are very few people who are doing. I always believe if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And you're one of the few people who's doing it right. And it is an honor, honestly, and an absolute privilege to share this space with you. Thank you.
Thank you again for that high praise. मतलब इतना झाड़ पे आपने चढ़ा दिया है, तो अभी थोड़ा मतलब वो सब करते हैं. But I think I have been in touch with you on and off for almost about a year now. आपने I think बहुत पिछले साल कभी एक बार मेरे को ट्विटर पे बोला था कि अच्छा काम कर रहे हो, जो कर रहे हो करते रहो. And over time we came to know कि भाई ठीक है, we've got in touch and we figured कि मतलब this is one conversation that we should have about how UPSC civil services exam has changed in the last decade, because there is no one better to share their insights on this than somebody who has been in this space for that entire period of 10 years. You've seen CSAT come, you've seen CSAT become qualifying, you've seen it change, you've seen prelims का क्या pattern change हो रहा है, कैसे change हो रहा है. I'm sure you have multiple toppers to your credit, and there's nobody better to talk about how the exam is changing, how the industry is changing, and these are the kinds of things that we'll be talking about in today's video, because we've been talking a bit before the video as well, and I just enjoy picking Atish's brain, and I'm sure he'll counter question me equally. So let's begin with something very simple, very relatively easy. In your 10-year experience, if somebody has to start with UPSC preparation, what's the easiest way for them to get into the game? How does anybody, zero, absolute beginner, how does one start UPSC preparation? How does one, try and learn कि भाई करना क्या है?
Perfect. Abhijit, I believe the formal eligibility criteria for this exam is that you have to be a graduate and you've got to be 21 years of age. Honestly, the minimum eligibility criteria should be that are you competent to study gradually for 6 hours a day to 8 hours a day for the next 2 years. मैं ये नहीं बोलता हूँ कि दिन के 10-12 घंटे पढ़ो. But if you think you have the capability to put in 6 to 8 hours a day for at least 6 days a week for the next 1.5 years, because you were telling me something incredible in one of your earlier videos that your pre-exam cycle is 1 year and your exam cycle is 1 year. So approximately for 2 years, if you're giving in 6 to 8 hours a day on a 6-day basis, that is your eligibility criteria. अगर आप ये कर सकते हो, then you should have a sense of belief कि भाई ये मेरे से exam हो जाएगा. And then how you start is, of course, the basic deal is take the syllabus and cross-reference the PYQ. So academic है.
Very simple question here. Let's say, for instance, if you're not preparing for UPSC, अगर कोई नौकरी कर रहे हो आप, 6-8 घंटे तो दिन में करोगे. So
exactly.
You're saying that anybody who can do a job can prepare.
Yes. So here's the thing. I don't think this is an IQ intensive exam, nor do I also think it is a very labor intensive exam. It is a mix of both, somewhere in the middle. And this is an exam which is dramatically different from, say, your CAT exam, which is heavily intellect based. You've got to be your sharpest self in those hours where you're writing the CAT exam or even an engineering entrance exam. I understand that there is an IQ differentiation, but with civil services, it is more of a stamina differentiation. आप
Exactly.
टिक जाओ बस, आप 6-8 महीने 1.5 साल के लिए चुपचाप अपने आप को विदाउट रियली क्वेश्चनिंग योर सेल्फ बियॉन्ड अ नेसेसरी पॉइंट टिक जाओ, तो मेरे ख्याल से ही हो सकता है ना. हियर्स द थिंग, we are incredibly dishonest people.
With ourselves, yeah.
Human beings as a race
Hmm.
are we are very dishonest creatures. Everybody will start out and say कि मेरा 6-8 घंटे तो मैं कर ही सकता हूँ, it is no big deal. But बॉस, आपको पता है, मुझे पता है, 6-8 घंटे consistently for 2 hours is one of the toughest things to do.
Yeah.
When you specifically want to do it qualitatively. किताब सामने रख के मोहनजोदड़ो करना बड़ा आसान है, but to really think about it, if you are studying something with utmost unquestionable attention, 1 घंटे बाद तो सर दर्द होगा ही.
बिल्कुल होता है.
You will automatically सर दर्द होगा. आप 1 घंटे से ज्यादा किताब को देख ही नहीं सकते. You will have to take a 5-10 minute breather and then come back to it, right? It's as you often mention, it is a marathon. Right, it is a marathon.
And it's not me who's mentioning it. It is like, I think I've learned it from educators, the great educators in the space, from people like you, that मैंने भी शुरू करी थी. I think you were an educator before I even started. So like, I think it's from people like you who are actually giving, the correct guidance. क्योंकि ये मतलब वही वाला है ना कि अगर शोशा में आ जाओगे एकदम से, like you're saying, कि एकदम से ऐसे एंथू में आगे कि नहीं 6 घंटे तो मैं कर लूंगा. करो 6 महीने करो, फिर आना बताना क्या रहा.
We as teachers are not able to put in 6 to 8 hours a day consistently, and this is our bread and butter. Our lives depend on it.
Yeah.
So, and हो जाता है, मैं कभी-कभी I'm not able to put in those many hours. It is fairly possible. तो वो बच्चों से तो होगा यार, हम तो बड़े हो गए, हमको बड़े होके भी इतनी अकल नहीं आ रही है, तो बच्चों से तो होगा ही ना, मतलब उनकी भी गलती नहीं है. So I think the first place people should really start, जैसा आप बता रहे हो, is I think figuring out whether you're really cut out for it or not. And then there is a very fine balance between under information and over information. Because today we've come to that phase, keep figuring out how much is relevant information for you to begin your prep with. The best place to start, I think, is read the damn syllabus. So many people across the board, people who've been doing this for 2 attempts, 3 attempts. मैं पूछूं कि मुझे बताओ exactly, छोटा सा example देता हूँ. The word governor is not mentioned anywhere in the polity mean syllabus. नहीं लिखा है. So governor questions will always be in the context of center-state federalism. वो कभी stand alone governor पे question आएगा ही नहीं, कभी भी नहीं आएगा, because वो syllabus को उस तरह से, it has been made a part of it. So that is something that we have to, really be careful about.
So I think आप तो काफी ज्यादा डिटेल में चले गए in that कि you're asking about governor mentioned नहीं है, but governor से related सवाल फिर भी आएगा, because center state relations. I have a simpler question. Like, tell me, is ancient and medieval mentioned in the main syllabus?
No, ancient and medieval is not categorically mentioned. No.
Art and culture is mentioned. Like ancient and medieval is not mentioned. But
not
like, you ask this to any, this is my filter test. कि तुम ये सवाल का जवाब दो, फिर मैं आगे बात करूंगा, क्योंकि फिर देखते क्या, क्यों मतलब एटलीस्ट तो बताओ कि तुमने सिलेबस पे ध्यान दिया है कि नहीं. Right, because I think I am also guilty of what you were just saying कि पहले एक आध अटेम्प्ट तो मैं भी ऐसा हवा में ही था कि हाँ ठीक है कर रहे सिलेबस देखा नहीं, ज्यादा कुछ किया नहीं, because I had people around me who were preparing, so I figured हाँ इनसे पूछ लिया, कर लिया, हो गया. But that is not the ideal way to go about it. सिलेबस नहीं देखा है तो भाई मतलब आप अपना समय बर्बाद कर रहे हो, वो 6 महीने बाद रियलाइज करो या अभी रियलाइज करो, एक ही चीज है. So like after syllabus, what do you think the most important next step is? कि you figured out कि भाई 6 से 8 घंटे काम कर सकते हो 2 साल के लिए, if मतलब, and that's a big if. Second is कि भाई then you go into what do you have to do for those 6 to 8 hours.
Correct. And then I think the third step would be is you can't be too fixated on your book list, because that will also evolve with a little bit more of prep.
Yeah.
But there have to be some non-negotiables and a small percentage which you may want to change over time because context changes over time.
Yeah.
अब कितनी भी गाली दे दो, मतलब एनसीईआरटी ज्योग्राफी हिस्ट्री पढ़नी है, वो एक वो आप पुरानी पढ़ो नहीं पढ़ो उसमें आप मार्केट के उसमें मत जाओ कि जो करंट सिलेबस है आज लिख रहे हो, तो एग्जामिनेशन जो सेट कर रहा है वो भी करंट सर्कुलेशन से ही एग्जाम सेट करेगा। तो आप एक बेसिक किताब उठा लो, आपकी एनसीईआरटी ज्योग्राफी हिस्ट्री के लिए आपको पढ़नी है, आपको पॉलिटी की एक वो जो 11th वाली वो है बेसिक, नॉट डिस्कसिंग अ बुक लिस्ट पर से, बट ये नॉन निगोशिएबल है। अब उसके ऊपर आपको रमेश सिंह पढ़नी है या फिर आपको कोई और इकोनॉमी की रेफरेंस पढ़नी है, दैट इज समथिंग यू कैन फिगर आउट आफ्टर अ क्रॉस कंपैरिजन, सिलेबस देख के, पीवाईक्यू देख के, मैप करके, देन यू कैन से दिस इज द बुक आई एम गोइंग टू गो थ्रू। And even going through half the book, you realize this book is not really giving you the kind of return on your investment, which is basically your time. Then you can afford to move to another source. बच्चे एक अटेम्प्ट के बाद ऑप्शनल बदल देते हैं, तो वो बदलने में तो क्या ही दिक्कत है। तो सो वो ठीक है, बट if there are, say, if it's out of 100%, say 60-65% should be your non-negotiable source, कि ये तो मैं I will not breach this. 30-35% you can figure out as per your own, sort of deal. So yeah.
So isme bhi I think see, for me I think it was a very difficult decision because last के एक दो attempt में मैंने सोचा था कि मैं optional बदल के देता हूँ, but that's an uphill battle in itself. So I think a lot of the time people are just not comfortable with So I think a lot of the time people are just not comfortable making that judgment call कि रमेश सिंह आधी पढ़ ली but ये लग नहीं रहा काम आएगी, because I think I did that with Ramesh Singh. I read like the first 2 chapters and I was like कि ये बहुत ज्यादा information है, इतना नहीं चाहिए मेरे को. But मतलब for me that was easier because I thought I had a good hold on economy. Now if somebody doesn't have that hold on a subject, it's very difficult sometimes for them to make that decision, which is why I always say कि भाई मतलब वो 6 महीना काम करो, पहले एक बार पॉलिटिक्स पढ़े, मतलब ये किताबें बेसिक तो पढ़ो एक बारी, like you said NCERTs करो तो एक बारी, because this is also something that I like to ask you is कि how often do you get this query कि सर एक अटेम्प्ट में निकालना है, कम से कम काम कैसे हो जाए वो बता दो.
Typical Indian psyche कि remember that Maruti Suzuki ad, all is great, mileage kitna degi, matlab we want the most efficient way to go about it, and there is no harm to think about it efficiently. So when a child actually comes and tells me that I want to get done with this in a year, that means the child is understood, and I appreciate the child for it, that the child is understood that the child is here for a specific cause. मेरा कॉज है कि एग्जाम निकालना है, मेरे को पब्लिक पॉलिसी एक्सपर्ट एनालिस्ट, मुझे अथॉरिटी नहीं बननी,
जो कि 4 साल बाद कई लोग अपने आप को समझते हैं in the game.
And I was just thinking about what you said कि वो रमेश सिंह, the mistake that all of us have committed with Ramesh Singh or any book for that matter,
like take the decision to skip Lakshmikant. Nobody can take that very easily.
Exactly, absolutely. So it's because there is a lot of fear. The cat is not like, I always compare it to cat because both are almost at the same level of the age of students writing it at some point of time or the other. So UPSC में क्योंकि आपको पता ही नहीं है, you don't know the origin of the question, which is also false because you can know the origin of the question. We choose to not spend enough time with the paper and the syllabus and the past years to know broad sort of circumference to the syllabus. But there is so much of fear factor that ये मैंने नहीं करा तो I'll go wrong. And this is where I'm going to go completely off track. And everybody around me is doing it. UPSC prep is that one prep where majority is not always right. because majority doesn't clear the exam.
Yeah.
If majority was always right, majority would have cleared this exam, right? So majority is not always right. अब आपको आपके आसपास सबके सब दिखेंगे, वो पता नहीं नॉर्मल लोग पढ़ते हुए वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री कि नहीं पढ़नी ही पढ़नी पड़ेगी यार। मतलब 2 सवाल गलती से कभी एक सवाल आ जाए, वो भी 2-2 3-3 साल में घुमा के, तो आपने वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री में अगर कभी आ जाए 1-2 साल में कभी घुमा के, तो उसके लिए उतना ही पढ़ो ना। एक वो हैंड आउट मिल जाता है बाजार में, जाके ले लो, उतना पढ़ के खत्म कर लो। इतने अच्छे रिसोर्सेज हैं। खान अकेडमी, दैट सलमान खान देयर, यूएस वाला सलमान खान, नॉट अपना वाला, दैट द अदर वन। सो यू नो the world history course on that is completely free. Khan Academy is a non-profit one, fantastic course. Take up the modules, match it with your syllabus, और मतलब एक बेस मिल गया और उससे आपने एक हैंड आउट पढ़ लिया, आपका हो गया। बट नहीं कि हमको, then what happens is, and I think we are to blame as educators, as teachers, कि देखो, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I think I should, is that we are all people who haven't made it through the exam. And that should instill a sense of humility, and it should not become a sense of insecurity कि मेरे में कुछ कमी थी, तो I'm going to overcompensate for my weakness by prescribing more reading to my students. I do believe UPSC teachers in a very, very poetic way are doctors. We prescribe medicines to students कि भाई ये किताब पढ़नी है, इतनी नहीं पढ़नी है, इतना करना. That child is going to trust you with their life. Yeah. So if you tell them to read even one book which is not necessary, I think it is criminal by nature. Honestly, for me, it is criminal by nature. अब वो क्यों? क्योंकि how else will you differentiate between a good teacher or a bad teacher? कि वो ज्यादा पढ़ाते हैं तो वो
Hello. Hello. I think I lost you.
Yes, Abhijit, can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think बीच में थोड़ा connection gap हो गया था. You were talking about कि how does a teacher who's prescribing more books अच्छा पढ़ाते हैं, ज़्यादा पढ़ाते हैं, उसके बारे में आप बता रहे थे.
Like, so yeah, I was basically saying that we are doctors. It is criminal for us to recommend a source to a child which is not in the best interest of the child, right? And no child is the same. No child is the same. So you can't, if somebody who's never heard of and you recommend that child to go read Sanjeev Verma as their first textbook in economics, the child is going to lose all faith in the preparation to begin with. A good teacher is not necessarily one who teaches in extraordinary depth, and if a teacher is oversimplifying it, that is also not necessarily a good teacher. A good teacher, I think, should always be somebody who's relevant. मतलब कि भाई इतना है, इतना ही आएगा और इसको ऐसे करना है, बस that's it. I think that should be a criteria for, क्या सही है क्या. And the sooner we realize that, and I think this is something I've noticed, हमारे से ज्यादा insecure कौन नहीं है प्रोफेशनल्स की इस देश में. There is no qualitative yardstick, Abhijit, that A is a teacher, B is a good institute. So what happens because of that is, there is always the other person. There's a German word called Schadenfreude, which basically means that you assume the worst. You assume the worst in the other person. तो नहीं, वो कुछ खराब कर ही रहा हो. मतलब सब लोग, मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, वाजीराम में हम लोग सब स्टाफ रूम में बैठ के विजन को गाली देते थे. भाई अच्छा तो काम कर रहे हैं यार, अच्छा तो काम नहीं गलत है. Like for example, till the time Shubhra ma'am was with Vajiram, everybody was very happy. The second Shubhra ma'am left Vajiram and set up her own thing. नहीं मैम के पॉल साइंस में ये खराब है. अरे क्यों खराब है यार, करने दो. I'm sure she will have some things to work on. I'm sure Vision will have some things to work on. I'm sure Vajiram will have some things to work on. I'm sure Next would have something to work on. Whatever कर रहे ना, तो मतलब इतना एंगस्ट और इतना मतलब क्यों भाई, मतलब क्या है, अच्छा काम करोगे everybody grows. But anyways, so that's that.
Yeah, so that's also something that I've always wanted to ask somebody who has had an overview, right? क्योंकि देखो, uh, and like I think I should really thank you for displaying the amount of humility and the amount of openness that you just came forward with, because not everybody is capable of that. कि मतलब आप बोल रहे हो कि भाई ये बहुत बेसिक चीज है, but sometimes just admitting it is hard, and that you were able to do it, that's my thank you for that. But another thing, जैसे कि पिछले 10 साल में you've been an educator since 2012, it's been 2022 now. So in the beginning, I think you started as an educator around the time when vision started becoming important, right? I think 2013 में Gaurav Agarwal sir थे who got rank 1, and that was vision's gateway to, like, now you look at the advertisements that vision puts out to the newspapers, like 10 in top 10,
Yeah.
because almost everybody is subscribed to something or the other. कोई टेस्ट सीरीज ले ली होगी, कुछ आपने करंट कुछ ले लिया होगा, तो विजन के पास वो आ गया कि हाँ जी आप हमारे यहाँ थे. So how have you seen the back end, कि एक तो है जो people who are preparing, how have you seen the side which is facilitating this preparation? How have you seen this part change? How has the industry changed? How have the players, how have the big players evolved? How have the new players emerged? And how has online changed the game? Has online changed the game?
Fantastic. Yes. So fantastically, I have gotten to the crux of it. I'll start with very simple example. जो आज से what was Rao's 25 years ago is what Vajiram is today. And 25 years from now, there'll be somebody else replacing Vajiram. This is basic economics. This is the basic cycle of business, right? So it's not that anybody has been here forever and they've been ruling, quote unquote, the industry forever. But so there has been a major mismatch at the pace at which the exam has moved versus the pace at which the exam prep industry has moved. These two paces are not in sync. जिस पेस पे एग्जाम बदल रहा है और जिस पेस पे हम लोग बदल रहे हैं वो बहुत ज्यादा मिसमैच्ड है. Thankfully, online has gotten it a little closer, because it is more instantaneous and there is a lot more two-way feedback. See, coaching institutions, core hardcore coaching institutions, it is a lot like our MPs in the parliament. 70% of our MPs are above 55 years of age.
Yeah.
ठीक है. जब मैं 50 साल का हो जाऊंगा, अभी 6 महीने में फॉर एग्जाम्पल, ठीक है, अगर मैं 50 साल का हो जाऊंगा तो मैं हर दिन यूपीएससी का पास्ट ईयर पेपर और अखबार शायद नहीं पढ़ूंगा, एंड दैट विल ऑटोमेटिकली मेक मी अ टेरेबल टीचर, which is why most fundamentally teachers in proper coaching institutions are not good teachers, because they are still in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s.
Out of sync with the exam, out of sync with the requirements of the exam.
आप किसी भी 20+ year, see, and this is a catch-22. The 20-year, 15-year old teachers will have fantastic conceptual clarity, because it's industrial.
It's comes with time. The more you teach, the clearer things will get.
Right. But on the other hand, आप उनको किसी को भी पूछो कि अच्छा बताओ पिछले साल यूपीएससी में क्या क्या क्वेश्चंस आए थे और क्या पैटर्न चेंज, उनको नहीं पता होगा. So that's the basic gap. Now, how has the coaching industry changed? Now, let's say pre-COVID and post-COVID. Pre-COVID, nothing changed. It was, so Vajiram, for example, because I've spent most of my time pre-COVID at Vajiram, I'm very honest about it. In terms of quality of teaching, phenomenal. In terms of quality of teaching, phenomenal, but very selectively phenomenal. There are 10% or maximum 20% of the teachers who are brilliant at what they do. The remainder 80% is more or less the same. Is it fundamentally different from somebody in the online space? I don't think so. So like what used to happen with Vajiram, and I'll tell you the cases. Before COVID, Vajiram was a mystery. कि क्लासरूम के अंदर कुछ अलग ही मैजिक चल रहा होगा, कुछ अलग ही हो रहा होगा, वो हमको पता नहीं, because they never revealed how they taught, in the class. Pre-COVID किसी,
if I am not asking you something proprietary, कुछ ऐसा अलग चल रहा था क्या?
नहीं that's what I'm going to tell you कि
चल कुछ नहीं रहा था, but there was just that air of mystery कि भाई पता नहीं क्या हो रहा है.
Correct. So and that is a good enough factor for people to be intrigued कि पता नहीं क्या होता है, कुछ तो होता होगा, कुछ तो सही जा रहा है. हाँ, बस टॉपर निकलते हैं, वो लास्ट में एडवर्टाइजमेंट दिखा देते हैं, टॉपर निकलते हैं, सही चल रहा है, बस सब लोग वही जा रहे हैं तो सही है. 20% of the teachers, especially a couple of them in the younger lot and a couple of them in the senior lot, are genuinely exceptionally brilliant. Most of them are just about average, and quite a few are also below average. ऐसा नहीं है. This is also the teaching composition almost everywhere else.
Yeah.
So it's a fact. So that's not the case. Before COVID, no, there was no accountability of coaching institutions. आपने कभी वाजीराम का YouTube चैनल नहीं देखा होगा कोविड के पहले.
मतलब
अब YouTube चैनल भी है.
Even before COVID, what I knew about Vajiram was कि there used to be this window, right? मतलब UPSC का फॉर्म खुलता है, वैसे वाजीराम के लिए फॉर्म खुलता था. एंड यूपीएससी का फॉर्म तो 1 महीना चलता है, तुम भरो. वाजीराम का फॉर्म 15 मिनट में खत्म हो जाता है कि भैया अब हमारी सीट भर गई है, हो गया, डन.
बट ऐसा नहीं है. वो फॉर्म भरना, अगर आपसे फॉर्म छूट भी जाता था, अगर आप फिजिकली ऑफिस में आते थे और रिक्वेस्ट करते थे तो वो एडमिशन दे देते थे. लक्ष्मी को कोई मना नहीं करता है.
घर आई है जब लक्ष्मी, तो क्या ही मना कर दोगे.
राइट. So I mean, it was difficult to get in. A lot of people gave up hope, and if you were persistent enough, they accommodated you. The batch sizes were huge. Teaching at Vajiram is the best thing to satisfy a teacher's ego, because आप 700-800 बच्चों को पढ़ा रहे हो, तो आपको लग रहा है कि आप एक आर्टिस्ट हो. हाँ, आपको लग रहा है कि आप एक आर्टिस्ट हो, आप एक कॉन्सर्ट में आए हो, एंड फिर रियलिटी डिस्टॉर्ट हो जाती थी. Thankfully, I was a little aware about all of this कि भाई ये रियलिटी नहीं है. हम राजेंद्र नगर एक बबल है, हम एक बबल में है. आप तोप नहीं हो, आप ऐसा एक्ट नहीं करना है. It is very important to prick yourself every time कि बस just because 1,000 students, 2,000 students are the numbers that you're dealing with on an average day. अगर 2 या 3 क्लास हो गई तो ऐसा नहीं है. बट कमिंग बैक टू योर क्वेश्चन, क्या कोचिंग, how was it? It was very instructional. It was very one way. It was and still most coaching institutions are very old school. कि अगर 2 घंटे की क्लास है तो 1 घंटा पढ़ाओगे, आधा घंटा डिक्टेट करोगे, फिर 1 घंटा पढ़ाओगे, फिर आधा घंटा डिक्टेट करोगे. Now people like you and I fundamentally can't get into the dictation mode. I find it morally questionable, क्योंकि बस हम टीचरों को घंटे के हिसाब से पैसे मिलते हैं. अगर घंटे के हिसाब से पैसे मिलते हैं तो मुझे डिक्टेट कराने के पैसे मैं मॉरली नहीं ले सकता. इट इज हैंड राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस, बट टीचर्स विल डू दैट, क्योंकि जितने घंटे बढ़ेंगे तो उतना मतलब
पे आउट बढ़ेगा. तो आई थिंक आई फंडामेंटली एग्री विद यू ऑन दिस कि अगर मैंने डिक्टेट करा दिया तो तुम्हारा जितना भी इंसेंटिव है दिमाग लगाने का वो तो चला गया ना, कि तुमको तो बना बनाया मिल गया.
और इसमें there are 2 things to it. अगर आप डिक्टेट नहीं करते हो ना, there are always a bunch of students who will say कुछ लिख रहा है. हाँ, exactly. So which is why it comes back to what we were originally discussing. All students are not the same. So you can't treat all students the same way also. So then you go the handout way, or you make some table in class and say to give them some resemblance of some physicality at the end of the class. तो वो सब is there कि हाँ चलो अच्छा पेपर में अच्छा ठीक है. So कुछ handout कुछ मिला मतलब, right? And so your question is, the coaching industry, how has it changed in terms of academics? Unfortunately, and I hate to say this, whether it's online or offline. In terms of relevant pedagogy, nothing has changed. Mostly nothing has changed. The medium has changed. People are now more diversely available. But the shift that was needed in teaching, as far as the exam is concerned, unfortunately, that has not happened. Core teaching still remains exactly how it was 10 years ago. It is now, in some cases, it's a PPT, in some cases, it's a PDF, in some cases, it's a workbook, in some cases, it's a book, whatever. But core hasn't changed. And that is a problem because the UPSC isn't that anymore.
Exactly. So I think let's very smoothly transition to the next set of discussion, which should revolve around the fact that UPSC is an exam that is like infamous for, rapidly evolving. कि आपको लगा थोड़ा कुछ हो गया, कोचिंग इंडस्ट्री वाले बताने लगे कि देखो ये है ये है ये है, because like for instance when I started there was this whole vision का उस टाइम पे mains 365 was like the rage in 2014-15 कि तुमने ये कर लिया and it's like done, that's it. But come around 2017 and 18 that is no longer true. 2017 and 18 mein then some people figured out ki, you have to be smart about current affairs, you have to collect them from multiple angles, and you have to be more specific about the way you're writing answers. You can't just you can't wing it anymore. कि broad points नहीं, अभी तुमको specifics पे थोड़ा जाना. You need to give good examples. You need to give a way forward. चीजें evolve हुई. And by I think 2021, at least in terms of prelims, I'm not sure कि mains में इतना change था, but for prelims at least there was a drastic departure from what had been happening before. So UPSC is iterating very rapidly. How long do you think am I lag?
Can you repeat the last?
Yeah, I think there was a lag in the middle.
So वो rapid के last वाला sentence आप एक बार फिर बता दो. That's the question, I think.
So I was simply saying कि UPSC is evolving and changing rapidly. UPSC हर 2-3 साल में एकदम कुछ नया कर देगा. And having given 6 attempts myself, मुझे लगता है कि this characteristic कि वह बदलेगा, कुछ भी कर लो बदलेगा. That keeps you on your toes. That is what is required, and that is, I think, somehow the requirement that UPSC is looking for in budding civil servant. कि भाई IAS बन भी गए, 2 साल में टेक्नोलॉजी चेंज हो गई, करो. अभी ऐसा थोड़ी 5 साल लगाओगे बदलने में. So in that sense, like, how have you seen the exam evolve in the last 2 to 3 years? कि अब नया, according to you, what is something that is relevant for the exam now? Like for instance, you were talking about कि online या offline जाओ, pedagogy has not changed a lot. So what is the relevant way to go about preparing if you are like preparing for, let's say, 22, 23 or in the coming future?
Right. So in terms of a pedagogical or an academic change, what I think is relevant is, no doubt you require more depth in your answer writing. No doubt you require more diversity and a good amount of innovation in it. But answer writing is not something which is scientific, in the sense that nowadays I often see कि भाई keyword analysis अलग होता है, कि explain का मतलब ये है, elucidate का मतलब ये है. मतलब यार क्या कर रहे हो, वो question में लिखा है, वो समझ जाओगे. The basic premise is your prelims is the topping on your mains. अगर मैं suppose, I'll give you a subject specific example.
Okay.
Suppose I have to prepare ordinances for the UPSC Civil Services exam. तो अब वो ordinances मेरे पास 2 पेज में होने चाहिए, और ये ही 2 पेज में मेरे को पूरा प्री से रेलेवेंट और मेन से रेलेवेंट इन्हीं 2 पेज में होना चाहिए.
ये तो बहुत छोटे पेज नहीं हो गए?
हाँ, मतलब थोड़े, हाँ, मतलब इसको फर्रे कहते हैं. मतलब ये आप डिस्क्वालीफाई हो जाओगे अगर आप but just
for example,
map to scale. Right, correct. So it's a map to scale. So ordinance, तो अब मैं क्या करूंगा कि भाई constitutional provisions regarding ordinances, the jurisdictional value of ordinances, center state powers की presidential power, governor powers. मैं कुछ data set लिख दूंगा कि भाई पिछले 10 सालों में on an average
कितने ऑर्डिनेंसेस बने हैं, कितनों को
ऑन
लॉ में
11,
कन्वर्ट
हाँ
किया गया,
कितने
दोस
बने,
काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स।
रिसेंट ऑर्डिनेंसेस क्या रहे हैं, वो
हम्म
जब जब आता जाएगा वहां लिखता जाऊंगा।
हम्म
फिर ऑर्डिनेंसेस से रिलेटेड मेरे क्या इश्यूज बन रहे हैं,
हम्म
कि ऑर्डिनेंसेस आर दे अब्यूज ऑफ पार्लियामेंट्री डेमोक्रेसी और नॉट।
हम्म
अब इसमें मैं क्या करूंगा कि ऑर्डिनेंस इज अ पार्लियामेंट्री फंक्शन।
हम्म
पार्लियामेंट्री फंक्शन क्या है? डेलिब्रेशन है,
हम्म
डिस्कशन है,
हम्म
लेजिस्लेटिव है, राइट? तो डज ऑर्डिनेंस, यू नो, negatively affect deliberation or discussion? Does ordinances negatively affect the legislative capacity of the parliament?
हम्म
उसमें मैं चार 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 पॉइंट बना दूंगा। जब जब अखबार में 6 महीने में एडिटोरियल आएगा, उसमें एक एक पॉइंट आएगा ऑर्डिनेंस का, मैं
कुछ
उसको
नया एक आध ही
हाँ,
मिलेगा, बिकॉज गिवन
एग्जैक्टली
पुट इन
एग्जैक्टली
सो
उसको
मच
मैं,
एफर्ट ऑलरेडी।
बिल्कुल मैं उसको वहीं लिख दूंगा,
हम्म
और स्टैंडर्ड टेक्स्ट बुक से एक दो जजमेंट निकाल के लिख दूंगा, और मेंस के पहले मैं गूगल पे सर्च कर दूंगा 2023 ऑर्डिनेंस जजमेंट सुप्रीम कोर्ट, तो कुछ नया नया टॉपिंग मार दूंगा, और मैं कंक्लूजन पे लिख दूंगा कि ऑर्डिनेंस होने चाहिए तो कंट्रोल्ड यूज में होने चाहिए, और रेयरेस्ट ऑफ द रेयर केस में होने चाहिए। अब ये 2-3 पेज में आराम से हो जाएगा, इसमें इतना कॉम्प्लेक्स है नहीं।
नहीं।
इससे ज्यादा प्री में कुछ नहीं पूछेंगे, इससे ज्यादा मेंस में कुछ नहीं पूछेंगे, बस।
So I think the major problem that people face, and this is a very comprehensive approach that you've shared, and अगर ये कर लेते हैं लोग तो it's in that sense preparation for the exam is systematic.
राइट,
आप एक तरीके से सिलेबस को ब्रेक डाउन करो, टॉपिक्स कैसे 2-2 3-3 पेजर के अपने डेंस नोट्स बनाओ। डेंस का मतलब यही है कि भैया आप उसमें किताब चेप नहीं रहे हो, किताब का वर्ड टू वर्ड नहीं कर रहे हो, जो क्लास में डिक्टेशन हुई वो नहीं कर रहे हो, you're doing these relevant things, the एकदम detailed analysis. But the two problems that I see here is number one that people are unable to select कि भैया कौन कौन से टॉपिक्स पे नोट्स बनाने हैं। Like for that I have a very simple answer कि भैया सिलेबस में जो भी मेंशन है ना उस पे तो बना ही लो, उसके फालतू अलावा क्या करना है वो देख लेना, बट लाइक वो तो बनाओ।
बिल्कुल।
But second is people still face a problem in analyzing things कि yes you had a very simple way of कि भाई ऑर्डिनेंस के बारे में 3-4 चीज लिख ली अपने एंड बट आफ्टर दैट कि वो इंटरेक्ट कैसे कर रहा है, कि भाई पार्लियामेंट से कैसे इंटरेक्ट कर रहा है, इज इट इन्फ्रिंजमेंट ऑफ पार्लियामेंट्री पावर्स, या फिर एग्जीक्यूटिव का क्या ये ओवररीच हो रहा है, या जुडिशरी से कैसे इसके क्या रेलेवेंट जजमेंट्स है। सो लाइक पीपल आई थिंक समहाउ फेल टू कनेक्ट दैट, एंड वहां पे फिर आपने नोट्स वोट्स बना लिए बट वो फिर नोट्स थोड़े मतलब नॉट अप टू द मार्क रह जाते हैं, एंड देन अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल फील कि यार मेहनत कर ली, नोट्स भी बनाए थे, सब किया था, बट हुआ नहीं। सो ये एक हमेशा आई थिंक गैप रहता है इस एग्जाम में, दैट देयर इज नो सेट पाथ, देयर इज नो एब्सोल्यूट बस ये कर लो। थोड़ा एक जजमेंट इन्वॉल्व रहेगा कि थोड़ा आपको एनालिटिकल दिमाग माइंडसेट डेवलप करना ही पड़ेगा,
And
बिना
the
उसके।
answer to your question is actually from the first question itself, which is the syllabus. अब जैसे हम, let's say we're just talking about ordinances. Ordinances are a subset of separation of powers,
Yeah.
which is the third line of the main syllabus. It says separation of powers and dispute resolution mechanisms in the country. राइट अब आप उससे, मैं तो पता 2013 ऑनवर्ड्स ही प्रीवियस ईयर पेपर देख लो। सो आपको सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स और चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस पे स्टैंडर्ड थ्योरी क्वेश्चन आए हैं। आपको ऑर्डिनेंस के क्वेश्चन में लिखा है, डू यू थिंक ऑर्डिनेंसेस वायलेट सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स? उसी से आपसे जुडिशियल रिव्यू का क्वेश्चन आया है, जुडिशियल एक्टिविज्म का क्वेश्चन आया है, जुडिशियल लेजिस्लेशन का क्वेश्चन आया है। Judicial review and judicial activism are actually subsets of separation of powers.
Yeah.
They are nothing to do with judiciary per se. कि बच्चे अपॉइंटमेंट रिमूवल के बाद जुडिशियल एक्टिविज्म पढ़ते हैं। जुडिशियल एक्टिविज्म तो सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स का खेल है, उसका आपसे और किसी चीज से लेना देना ही नहीं है। सो यूपीएससी हैज ऑलवेज आस्क्ड क्वेश्चंस लाइक दैट कि जुडिशियल लेजिस्लेशन की आड़ में पीआईएल क्या हुआ, पीआईएल की आड़ में सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स क्या हुआ। सो टू नो कि मैं ऑर्डिनेंस कितने डेप्थ में घुसूं, दैट डेप्थ इज टू बी डिराइव्ड फ्रॉम योर पास्ट ईयर पेपर्स। कि बस okay, so there is going to be a question on a relationship between ordinance and separation of powers. There is going to be a question on a relationship between ordinance and parliamentary democracy. There is going to be a question on a relationship between ordinances and executive overreach. इसके बाहर तो नहीं आएगा। अब इसके बाहर आया तो किसी, बस इसके बाहर नहीं आएगा। अब इसके बाद आएगा तो किसी को भी नहीं आएगा। ठीक है, इतना तो और अगर इसके बाहर आ भी गया भाई, इतना तो लिख के आ ही जाओगे ना। मैं आई एम नॉट सेइंग यू विल गेट द हाईएस्ट मार्क्स, बट 2 नंबर तो दया करके मिल ही जाएगी ना।
Exactly. Much better than zero. And I think just this, ये आपने एक टॉपिक को ब्रेक डाउन किया ना, सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स को, एंड यू वेंट इनटू सो मच डिटेल. आई कैन अंडरस्टैंड लाइक व्हाई यू आर वन ऑफ द टॉप एजुकेटर्स, कि आप मतलब वो अटेंशन टू डिटेल एक बहुत जरूरी चीज रिक्वायर्ड होता है, जो कि जितने भी एजुकेटर्स से मतलब मैंने इंटरेक्ट किया है या जिनसे मैं पढ़ा हूँ, तो मतलब मुझे मिला नहीं इतना कहीं. एंड जब वो मिलता है तो फिर मतलब काफी अच्छा लगता है. क्यों? क्योंकि लाइक दैट जस्ट सिंपली शोज मी कि यार यू सिलेबस का तीसरा पॉइंट आपने रटा हुआ है, मतलब वो याद था आपको पूरी चीज. एंड लाइक आई यूज्ड टू थिंक कि हाँ मतलब आई स्पेंड दैट टाइम एंड एफर्ट कि हाँ ये करा है. एंड आई नेवर मेट एन एजुकेटर हु वुड बी एबल टू टेल मी ऑल ऑफ दीज थिंग्स, क्योंकि उनको लाइक यू सेड ओल्ड स्टाइल चल रहा है वो, कि हम आएंगे, हम लेक्चर देंगे, हाँ जी ये चल रहा है, यूं हो रहा है, ऐसे हो रहा है, वैसे हो रहा है. बट what is important sometimes people forget is कि eventually everything that you're now doing here is in the end not to learn about Indian political system, not to practice law, it is to clear an exam.
Yeah.
So for that first and foremost वापस वही निकल के आता है सिलेबस. एंड सिलेबस अगर नहीं पढ़ोगे तो यार ठीक है, हो गया, अभी चिल मारो फिर.
अब उसमें भी अननेसेसरी डिकोड करने की जरूरत नहीं है कि मतलब सो डोंट मेक अ रूल आउट ऑफ एन एक्सेप्शन. जैसे इस बार, एंड माय फॉल्ट एंड एवरी पॉलिटी टीचर्स इन द कंट्रीज फॉल्ट, पॉलिटी में 15th फाइनेंस कमीशन की जगह 14th फाइनेंस कमीशन पढ़ाया था, पूछा था.
हाँ ये आई वाज अ लिटिल कंफ्यूज्ड व्हेन आई सॉ द क्वेश्चन.
गिल्टी एज चार्ज्ड. I could not
Nobody could oversee that कि 5 साल पिछला पूछ लेंगे.
correct. But my saving grace is there is so much of an overlap in the base recommendations of the 14th and the 15th. तो आप टेक्निकल डिटेल हटा के ब्रॉड TOR लिखोगे तो 20% नंबर तो तब भी मिल ही जाएंगे.
And even more than that, I think well, for me at least when I was studying, so like for instance many time the 14th was the one that was relevant. So abhi, how do I gauge the relevance of the 14th? I compare it to the 13th.
Correct. So
Right.
there will always be this. Remember back in that there was this McBride commission question in the means.
Yes.
तो अब उस पे आप you can't get into the
कुछ भी कर लो वो नहीं आएगा, वो कुछ भी कर लो वो नहीं आएगा,
और वो किसी को भी नहीं आएगा. मतलब अगर वो एक बच्चे को आ भी गया, 50 बच्चों को आ भी गया, एंड आई कैन टेल यू दिस, जो बच्चा मैकब्राइड कमीशन लिख के आया है ना, उसने उस मैकब्राइड कमीशन को पढ़ने के लिए बाकी पेपर्स पक्का कॉम्प्रोमाइज करेंगे.
डेफिनेटली. क्योंकि इतना आपको इतना ऑब्स्क्योर, इतना नॉट मेंशन्ड, इतना मतलब लोग आके गूगल कर रहे थे. जस्ट लाइक आई रिमेम्बर दिस वेरी वेरी विविडली बिकॉज़ दिस वाज माय फर्स्ट मेंस.
राइट.
इट वाज इन 2016, मेरा फर्स्ट मेंस था ये. एंड मैं बाहर निकला हूँ एंड आई एम जस्ट लाइक आस्किंग अराउंड पीपल, भैया किसी को मैकब्राइड कमीशन पता है क्या? And like everybody is like नहीं. And one of my friends, he was a classmate in college. वो बंदे को पता था. He was already in service at that time. He was an IPS. And इस 16 वाले में he became an IAS. मतलब double digit rank थी उसकी कुछ. So that's the only guy that I met in that center of there were about 500 people. I asked around even after, मतलब और लोगों से मैंने पूछा, पर किसी को नहीं आता. पर like एक वो बंदे को random कुछ उसने कीवर्ड स्ट्राइक कर लिया था उस सवाल में से, and फिर उस पर कुछ लिखाया.
Exactly.
So which is something that you've been mentioning कि इतना तो कर ही लोगे, टर्म्स ऑफ रेफरेंस तो पता ही होगा, कुछ तो लाइक साइड इन्फॉर्मेशन आपको आ ही जाएगी, बट स्टिल देयर माइट बी समथिंग जो लाइक इतना रैंडम है दैट इवन दैट वो दो नंबर निचोड़ना भी बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है.
Exactly. तो मतलब so what happens is we have a tendency to chase, the unattainable fruit is always the most seductive. That's the origin of humanity in the first place. Adam और Eve, apple वाला, right? So the same thing is here also. कि मुझे ये क्वेश्चन कैसे नहीं आया तो मैं अपनी पूरी जिंदगी इस क्वेश्चन का जवाब ढूंढने में लगा दूंगा. And that is wrong. वो हमें नहीं करना चाहिए. ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं यार, नहीं आया, 70% पेपर तो फेमिलियर है ना, उसको अच्छे से कर लो. तो 30% वैसे भी किसी को नहीं आएगा. So don't worry about it. That's also true for prelims also. Sorry, आप कुछ कह रहे थे?
नहीं, exactly, completely agree with you in this कि I don't think it is possible to ever cover 100% of the syllabus.
No.
You can't, and like you shouldn't aim for it either. कि आप 80% जो है उसको इतना सॉलिड कर लो कि भैया यहाँ से कुछ भी पूछ लो मुझसे, I'm good to go. and that should be good enough for you to advance in the stages of the exam. मतलब सिलेक्शन के बारे में ऑब्वियसली आपका क्या 80% क्या चूज किया है उस पर डिपेंड करेगा, बट इन जनरल मतलब दैट इज माय परसेप्शन ऑफ इट कि अब जीआई टैग्स आते हैं, लेट्स से फॉर इंस्टेंस पीपल प्रिपेयर फॉर प्रीलिम्स, मैं जीआई टैग्स थोड़े बहुत देख लेता था, रिसेंट क्या है, मे बी मैप का कुछ क्वेश्चन बन जाए, कुछ 50 जीआई टैग आ गए, कितने देख लूंगा, कितने याद कर लूंगा, क्या रह जाएगा, माय देयर इज ओनली अ लिमिट टू व्हाट आई कैन डू. And I think so recently also I made a short where I said ki, it's not important for you to remember dates, exact dates in history.
Yes, and the chronology. I remember that short.
Right.
I'm a fan of yours. मैं आपके सारे shorts देखता हूँ.
Thank you for that. But see, as soon as I said that, like I got a comment which is like कि I feel you are getting out of touch with the exam. क्यों? क्योंकि 2021 में there was one question which had an exact date.
Okay.
Which was the Quit India movement का 8th of August. Like 8th of August अब is like such a pivotal moment कि यार it's like वो तुम 15 अगस्त नहीं याद करोगे, वो बोल रहे हो कि like 15th August 1947 नहीं, ये डेट याद मत करना. Because like 8th of August, August Kranti, like Quit India movement and like pivotal moment. But अब वही है कि once you say something and फिर वो हिचपिच हो जाता है. So there is always that idea ki no matter how much you prepare, no matter how much you try and optimize things, there will always be something that you'll miss out on, and that is something that UPSC I think specializes in doing. Ki har saal
it's okay to miss out.
Yeah,
be okay, koi baat nahi, focus on what you have.
Exactly.
सही बात है, completely agree with you. मतलब don't chase unattainable targets. And I think there's a lot of responsibility on us as teachers that when we are prescribing resources or a study plan, like for example very recently you had come up with your week by week Excel sheet Google wala. I must tell you, a lot of the students who've been in touch with me have shared your Excel sheet जो आपने Google Drive पे apparently upload करी. Your targets were so reachable कि भाई इतना. You did not recommend a Bandyopadhyay to be read 5 times because
नहीं हो पाएगा
मतलब कर लो. So as teachers it is our responsibility to, like for example, I can go on a rant here, but please stop recommending MP Jain to students कि भाई पॉलिटी के लिए MP Jain पढ़ लो. हम नहीं पढ़ते यार, हमें इतना समय हो गया कि मतलब and I see so many people get into a lot of technical कि अब से IR के लिए किताब हो गई, सोशल इश्यूज के लिए किताब. मेरा सब्जेक्ट गवर्नेंस, मैं खुद बोलता हूँ मेरे लिए किताब मत खरीदो, कुछ मत, नहीं नजर होता है यार. मतलब कुछ बेसिक चीजें हैं, उनको वो कंट्रोल्ड रिलीज इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. एंड इट्स एन इनपुट आउटपुट बैलेंस. जैसे मेडिवल हिस्ट्री की बात कर रहे थे थोड़ी देर पहले, ठीक है, मतलब उतना ही पढ़ो जिससे आपके अगर 5 सवाल है तो 2 निकल जाए. बट जितनी मेहनत आप वो एक्स्ट्रा 3 सवाल करने के लिए करोगे इन मेडिवल हिस्ट्री, यू विल पॉसिबली गेट 5 more questions of geography right with the same quantum
amount of effort.
Right, so it's an input, and nobody cares if you are a prelims topper or not. Nobody cares.
I don't think, like, nobody knows who's a prelims topper.
Exactly. Nobody cares. Neither should you. Neither should anybody who's watching this. भाई prelims topper क्या करोगे? 110 चाहिए ना, तो 110 लाने के लिए bare minimum बहुत है. So of course I absolutely agree with you that it's okay to not know a few things, but it is not okay to not know things that everybody should.
And that is where I think the judgment lies. That is where the एक वो वाली चीज होती है कि जब तक आप वो धक्का नहीं मारोगे इधर घुस के थोड़ा, जब तक you're struggled with a few things, you will not know what are the things that are important. You read Lakshmikant for the first time, everything looks damn important कि भाई मतलब हर पेज पे इतना information क्या, but like once you've read it a couple of times, once you've like attempted some PYQs, then you realize a lot of it is fluff. कि वो पहला पेज, let's say constitutional bodies वाला जो chapter है, so like वो पहला पेज is almost the same for chip सबके ऊपर वही लिखा है.
Yeah.
Right?
They just change the article number and just
the article number change हो गया, बाकी एक आध year change होगा, but like so full format copy.
More or less the same. Yeah.
So जब तक आपने वो किताब नहीं पढ़ी है 2 बार, क्योंकि पहली बारी तो आपको वही लगेगा ना कि ओ माय गॉड मुझे मतलब ये ह्यूमन राइट्स कमीशन का भी याद करना है, ओ माय गॉड मुझे ये अपना नेशनल कमीशन फॉर SC ST OBC इन सब का भी याद करना है. ओ माय गॉड, मुझे ये मतलब चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर का भी याद, सबका याद कर रहा है. देन व्हेन यू सी द स्ट्रक्चर, वो स्ट्रक्चर कब दिखेगा आपको? लाइक लक्ष्मीकांत विल नेवर टॉक अबाउट द स्ट्रक्चर. Lakshmikant will just like bombard you with information, which is the way to go about it. But like why I think that is why a lot of people are afraid of Lakshmikant. That is why I think the coaching industry thrives. क्यों? क्योंकि आपका जो इंट्रोडक्शन टेक्स्ट है वो इतना कॉम्प्लिकेटेड हो गया है कि भाई मतलब क्या करें. So people are looking for mentors, people are paying like exorbitant sums of money, which is also something like I think like we were discussing just before we were talking कि एक जिम में जाते हो आप, तो there is always that option of exercising on your own, and there is the option of getting a personal trainer. The personal trainer is going to be very very expensive and will probably tell you things that you can Google. कुछ अलग नहीं बताएगा वो. But for some reason with civil services exam people are willing to pay for that personal trainer where you would not have paid for a personal trainer जब आप खुद जिम जा रहे थे. Similar example, but है कुछ है. So I think on that note, I'd simply like to ask you this last couple of questions, which revolve around the fact that since you've been here for so long, and since like I really really appreciate that the amount of analytical thinking you bring to the table. I'm sure you've analyzed what makes for a civil services exam topper. Who are the people who become successful, be it after a year or two? I think one of the things you already mentioned at the beginning of this video, which was कि take care of. मतलब बहुत ज्यादा IQ नहीं चाहिए, बहुत ज्यादा मतलब ऐसा कुछ नहीं चाहिए, take care of हो जाएगा. So what are the other things according to you that make for a UPSC CSE topper?
Abhijit, at the outset, I must tell you, we as an industry, maybe because of advertising constraints or marketing constraints, we glorify a rank 1, forget the rank 800, which I think is the stupidest thing to do. And we glorify a person who's made it in the first attempt as opposed to a person who's made it in their 5th attempt. हम 5th attempt की perseverance celebrate करते हैं, उसकी learning नहीं. Because अगर किसी ने 5th attempt में ये exam निकाला है, that person will be able to tell you more than a person who's actually cleared it in the first attempt.
Yep.
Because
that person will be more job ready.
Right. And the first attempt person, there will be a degree of circumstantial sort of luck in place. And I've often seen that and this is a personal bias maybe, but I have seen the conversations I've had with people who've not been in the top 200 have been far more enlightening for me because they've really wanted to share so much more. जो पहले 100-200 वाले rankers होते हैं, they are extraordinary, they're good, excellent, but because the world is after them, they have very beauty pageant kind of answers. Poverty हम हटा देंगे, and some incredible insights come from people who you're not talking to. 500 rank or 400 rank, and their struggles are real. एक rank 1 और एक rank 900 में क्या फर्क है? 10 नंबर, 20 नंबर.
मतलब slightly more, I think 100-120, but it's not
in terms
all that much. In terms of every answer, it's maybe half a mark. Exactly.
So in terms, no, from rank 1 to rank 100, of course 100 number का फर्क है, but let's say in terms of a specific paper, मैं उस margin की बात करता हूँ, 20-25 नंबर से ज़्यादा का फर्क नहीं होता.
नहीं होता, बिल्कुल नहीं होता.
Right. So in that sense, तो उसमें एक इंसान की, it doesn't change the capability of a person.
Yeah.
And I also, and something that you and I both have in common is we don't, and that is also something which I really admire you for, is we don't run behind your topper. कोई जरूरत नहीं है, मतलब ठीक है. And it's because you understand that the discussion behind the making of a topper or anybody is that किसी से भी आप बात कर लो, they've all been through the same hell as everybody else who's cleared the exam and has also not cleared the exam but given the exam sincerely enough. Matlab, they've always had nights where they've woken up and they've puked their guts out because they were so anxious. They've had sleepless nights. They've scratched their fingernails to a point that the skin has come out.
Yeah.
They've had bald patches. They've started plucking their hair out. ये वो लोगों को नहीं दिखता है. उनको दिखता है कि भाई अब वो रैंक 1 है, तो भाई उसके पीछे बहुत कुछ है. So the making of a topper is the fact that they're just incredibly hardworking. Honestly, if I have to choose between somebody who's intelligent and somebody who's hardworking, I think hardworking. That's the key. And I always believe the harder you work, the luckier you get. It's that simple.
I think that is a very true assessment कि आपकी intelligence है, ठीक है, great है, but especially for this exam, because एक तो एग्जाम साइकिल है, एक तो मतलब कंटेंट लाइब्रेरी इतनी आपको रिक्वायर्ड है कि मतलब नो मैटर हाउ इंटेलिजेंट यू आर, टिल द टाइम यू डोंट हैव फोटोग्राफिक मेमोरी, कि मतलब ना एक बार पेपर देखा और छप गया बस दिमाग में, आप दोबारा देखने की जरूरत नहीं है. सो टिल द टाइम यू आर नॉट डूइंग दैट, मेहनत तो लगेगी.
There are so many contradictions in this process, Abhijit, that the syllabus has become, I think, it's one of the most beautiful syllabi in a competitive exam any country can ever have. But the people who are marking your answer papers are still old school. आप समझ लो the contradiction कि मतलब इतने सुंदर सवाल आप ऐड कर रहे हो, what can France learn from India secularism for that matter, which I think was a little too overconfident for my liking, but but अब इतना, it is such a beautiful question to ask. There's so many things that you could write, but आप क्या लिखोगे? Active versus welfare, active versus passive, welfareist, interventionist. You'll give one Charlie Hebdo example, one Burkha Van example. You'll give, state welfare in religion and some 28, 29, 30 articles, 25 articles. वो दो चार चीजें छाप छुप के रख के हम लिख के आए. नंबर उतने, क्योंकि नंबर उसके मिलने हैं. So it becomes, and I feel bad because it becomes very confusing for the student. Yeah. That your paper is so dynamic, but you have to write your answers in the simplest manner, and that's where they have an internal battle. कि मैं हिंदू का एडिटोरियल पढ़ा, मेरे को लगा कि अगला मैगसेसे अवार्ड मेरा ही है, but I have to still write a very what, where, when, how kind of an answer.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the crux of it. That the simplest answers are always the most well-rewarded answers. They, on an average, if your answers don't have to have the panache and the makeup of everything else, they have to be really, really simple, clear, and to the point. And the second, I think that the second issue that we often face with is with children, and the whole topper discussion that we're having is, what makes a topper is the general ज्ञान में नहीं जाना चाहता कि वो मतलब you don't give up, motivation नहीं, but to be honest with yourself कि यार मेरे को ये नहीं आता है. मेरे को I have read, say, a chapter on wind movements, and I still don't know what a Coriolis force is. And I'm going to go back and I'll fix why I don't know what a Coriolis force is. Self-assess up, no matter what mentor, this mentor, that mentor, great mentors. I still think today, with the kind of resources that are available, spend on a mentor more than spend on a mentor or a customized sort of class that you need than to go buy like a holiday package, which is a coaching center. Right? So, very honest.
I'm like essentially rate same a holiday package and
correct. And unfortunately, and I'm this is how मतलब मेरे लिए थोड़ा सा conflict है, because वो पैसा उस system का मैं भी एक हिस्सा हूँ. Thankfully, unfortunately, रहा हूँ काफी समय तक. And that's something that's a moral dilemma that you have to live with. But again, the whole topper thing, honesty with yourself, hard work is what it takes. हमने सपने बेचे हैं, आपने, मैंने, इस पूरी इंडस्ट्री में सब सपने बेचते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट जॉब है, सोशल प्रेस्टीज है, फाइनेंशियल स्टेबिलिटी है, रेलेवेंट वर्क है, यही 4-5 का ज्ञान है, सब देते हैं.
स्टैंडर्ड 4-5 आंसर.
हाँ, ये सब. there is no harm in selling somebody a dream, but don't sell a dream to somebody who A, does not want it, or B, is not in the space to chase the dream. Or there are very few people like you who in the online space have been very realistic about their prep कि भाई ये कर सकते हो तो यूपीएससी की तैयारी करो, ये नहीं कर सकते हो तो मत करो. बहुत लोग क्या करते हैं, जैसे भाजीराम में भी होता था कि ऐसे फीस ले लिया, उसके बाद हम क्लास में जाके बोले अगर ये नहीं कर सकते तो आईएएस नहीं बनोगे. अरे भाई तो पहले बोलना चाहिए था ना कि ये नहीं कर सकते तो. सो वी आर इन द बिजनेस ऑफ सेलिंग ड्रीम्स, एंड unfortunately the online, so especially in the pandemic, more people are able to see this dream. And अभी से आपने कभी सोचा है that in India education as a sector is non-profit, चाहे स्कूल हो या चाहे कॉलेज हो. It is only competitive education which is a for-profit sector in the country in the larger domain of education. मतलब स्कूल नॉन प्रॉफिट है लीगली, कॉलेज नॉन प्रॉफिट है लीगली, इवन एन एमिटी यूनिवर्सिटी इज लीगली अ नॉन प्रॉफिट इंस्टीट्यूशन. They make crores and legally, legally they're registered as a non-profit, right? हमारी जो इंडस्ट्री, आपकी और मेरी जो इंडस्ट्री, वो एक फॉर प्रॉफिट इंडस्ट्री. बट आई स्टिल बिलीव we should have an element of sustainability, and we should have an element of humanism in what we do. Like through you, with the kind of work you do with your UPSC, your videos, whether it's about strategy or direction, a lot of the work that you do is free, and a lot of the work that you do, a very minimal amount of work that you do, is actually paid, and that is something which I also do, and that's something that I believe is what almost every other teacher should do. Everything should not have a price tag, because if everything has a price tag, then you are selling dreams wrongly to the wrong people. ये हमारे कोचिंग में तो है ना कि मतलब कि टेस्ट सीरीज के भी पैसे हैं, नोटबुक के भी पैसे हैं, एसी के भी पैसे हैं, बैठने के भी पैसे हैं, खाना खाने के भी पैसे. अरे यार, so online I think that is something which is really distorted like the entire ecosystem की. सही है. And let me tell you, especially in the online platform, this is an absolute misconception that people in tier 2 or tier 3 or with less magnanimous academic backgrounds are not smart. Not at all. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. I have seen some of the most challenging students in terms of the kind of questions that they ask me come from places or colleges I may have not heard from. Or I have seen people who are not fluent in, say, which is colossally called like an educated language, English. कोई इंग्लिश में सवाल नहीं पूछ रहा है इसका मतलब नहीं कि वो बेवकूफ है, ऐसा भी नहीं है. So it has really helped a lot of right people to get in, but it has also unfortunately had a lot more people to come in which may not be in the right space for it. Because अभी भाई we are the McDonald's of education. हम लोग कोचिंग इंडस्ट्री के फास्ट फूड है ना. कि हम क्या करते हैं, हम हिंदू और इंडियन एक्सप्रेस अब तो दोनों ही एक्सप्लेन कॉलम निकालने लग गए. हम उनका एक्सप्लेन कॉलम निकालते हैं, उस पे हम 3 पेज की गूगल की रिसर्च करते हैं, 1-2 किताब फ्लॉन्ट करने के लिए पढ़ते हैं, और उस पे हम एक लेक्चर बना देते हैं, और हम बन जाते हैं सब्जेक्ट मैटर एक्सपर्ट्स. ये मैं collectively I'm talking about this on behalf of the industry, not
नहीं, but like I completely agree with that assessment, because like what is a subject matter expert in civil services space, but like exactly जो बोला आपने यही है और कुछ नहीं है.
ठीक है, ये मेरी रियलिटी है, और I am comfortable with that reality कि मुझे पता है, और क्योंकि वो मेरी रियलिटी है कि मैं सिर्फ 5 चीजें पढ़ के 2 चीजें काम की बताऊंगा, क्योंकि बच्चा भी 5 चीजें पढ़ के ही 2 चीजें काम की रखेगा. राइट. सो you don't have to, or I don't have to flaunt my hard work or my intelligence. ये किताबें मैं शो में रखता हूँ क्योंकि आजकल जरूरी हो गया है कि अगर आपके बैकग्राउंड में किताबें रहती तो बच्चों को लगता है टीचर पढ़ते हैं. Most of what we do is we read online. I have not opened a legal research referral manual in for about 5 years, ever since you have a, like we as lawyers have an SEC online database that we keep looking for, but ऐसी मोटी मोटी किताबें लॉ की रखती कि हाँ वकील साहब को आता होगा.
और सीनियर एडवोकेट के ऑफिस में आप जाओ तो यू ऑलवेज सी दैट लॉ कंपेंडियम A to Z वाला रेफरेंस.
सुप्रीम कोर्ट डाइजेस्ट
जो भी
चाहिए,
खा रहा है बस.
कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली डिबेट चाहिए, ऐसे ना 38 वॉल्यूम मेरे भी अपने ऑफिस में रखे, बट नहीं अब नहीं रखते क्योंकि यार जरूरत नहीं. बट सो अ लॉट ऑफ व्हाट वी स्टार्टेड डूइंग Abhijit as an industry, which is really harmful for students, is that we are either playing the over depth game कि हम आपको कुछ ऐसा बताएंगे जो कोई और नहीं बताएगा, and in the depth that we have to, that is a problem. Yeah, two, we are making such slapstick immediate content. We become a lot like the news industry. It doesn't matter if you get it right, you have to get it first.
Yeah.
On the today there has been a militarized action between Russia and Ukraine. There are already 50 videos of UPSC tutors on YouTube on हमला कर दिया और ये सब कर दिया. I understand we're in the content business and understand that we're all fighting for attention, but there is a larger moral responsibility. तो वो टॉपर्स और ये सब लिंक्ड है. और मैं आजकल ये भी देखता हूँ अभिजीत, मुझे बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं लगता कि I see a lot of teachers, say bad things about toppers. ठीक है,
मतलब
हाँ कि टॉपर्स बिकाऊ हैं, टॉपर्स वो बस मन नहीं. कोई भी टॉपर पैसे लेके ये नहीं बोलेंगे कि भाई इन्हीं से पढ़ो, मैंने इन्हीं से पढ़ा था. They may travel, they may come, but they will never say anything which is fundamentally problematic in the interest of the child. टॉपर बोलेगा कि हाँ कि मैं वो एक सेमिनार में जाएंगे कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट के, वो अपनी स्ट्रैटेजी बताएंगे, बोलेंगे कि आपको ऐसा ऐसा पढ़ना चाहिए, एंड बोलेंगे यू हैव डिसेंट टीचर्स हियर और व्हाटएवर. आई कंप्लीटली एग्री, वो ठीक है. उसमें देयर विल बी अ फाइनेंशियल ट्रांजैक्शन. आई हैव हैड पीपल हु कम टू मी कि सर हम ये कर सकते हैं, कैन यू हेल्प अस गेट अ फाइनेंशियल डील. मैंने कहा भाई सॉरी, दोबारा बात मत करियो. तो वो सब ठीक है. That's but I have never seen a topper say कि I am going to misguide students. I see and I see a lot of our fraternity doing that. कि toppers are misguide. Toppers don't misguide students. They may not be very accurate with what they are saying, but they don't say anything which
fundamentally untrue, fundamentally wrong.
Fundamentally untrue तो नहीं बोलते हैं. अब वो होगा कि कोई फर्स्ट टू अटेम्प्ट वाला टॉपर है, उसने लक्ष्मीकांत नहीं पढ़ी, तो अरे लक्ष्मीकांत नहीं पढ़नी, लक्ष्मीकांत देखो कैसे टॉपर बोल रहे लक्ष्मीकांत नहीं पढ़नी है, उसका कुछ होगा. कोई बोलेगा मैंने 10 बार पढ़ी, अरे देखो 10 बार, ठीक है यार उसने पढ़ी ना. उसने ये तो नहीं बोला कि ये नहीं पढ़ोगे तो एग्जाम नहीं निकलेगा. उसने ये भी नहीं बोला कि ये पढ़ोगे तो एग्जाम नहीं निकलेगा. उसने पढ़ी. that is where your discretion sort of comes in. I've not seen that in that context. And then of course, because and it is one of my dreams, Abhijit. One day I'm going to the court, and Shashank and I have that in common. One day I'm going to go to court very soon, and I'm going to make sure that we set up at least a coaching regulator all India for competitive exams. ये बहुत हो गया है कि मतलब उसमें
unregulated business, इतना blatantly you're selling anything and everything, and often to people who can't afford it. And well, yes, I agree with you in some senses कि ये जो ecosystem has developed or is moving in a direction that is not the best way for us to be going in general in terms of education, क्योंकि स्कूल पे इतना ध्यान नहीं है. It is more about कि किस कोचिंग में तुम जा रहे हो. And that's not just for UPSC civil services exam, it's for like it could be IIT JEE coaching, it could be NEET coaching, it could be like 100 different other coachings that exist for each and every.
Abhijit, I don't understand. I have heard of coaching institutions who, after results get cleared out, and I have seen emails from those coaching institutes that people who get selected often share with me, कि sir ये आया था, हमें जाना चाहिए कि नहीं. They've been called in for a 2-day holiday in a city. That they've been asked कि अच्छा बस 2 दिन आ जाओ, and we'll make you stay in a 4-star or a 5-star property. वो बच्चा चला जाएगा. बच्चा needs a holiday. But आप उससे what is the messaging that you're trying to send across? राइट? तो अब जैसे वो टॉपर्स की हर साल लिस्ट आती है दैट रैंक वन स्टडीड इन 10 डिफरेंट प्लेसेस, बिल्कुल रियलिटी नहीं है। आप किस टॉपर का किस कोचिंग की वजह से हुआ है?
You can't say, like, if I just take my example, so like I've given 6 attempts. I've taken test series from Vision, from Insights, from Forum, from like other places. I've like taken sociology ka coaching, and like I've taken sociology ka notes. I've taken like sociology ka test series. So, like ऐसा 10 तो मेरे हो गए. अब like if I clear, who claims? Everybody.
Correct, 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 correct. In fact, see, that is where I think online has really made a difference. जैसे Netflix और Amazon Prime का वजह से a lot of the movies that did not get a theatrical release were able to get a release here and they made their mark. Similarly, a lot of extremely brilliant teachers, right? Youngsters, you guys, who unfortunately, अगर आज offline नहीं होता, अगर आज online नहीं होता, if the focus was purely on offline, there would have been a point of time where you would have auditioned, and हम लोग audition करते हैं, ठीक है? We would have auditioned at a Vajiram or at a Next or at a Vision or at a Rouse or wherever to teach. आज जो आप हो, with the kind of insight that you have, and because you're working in your own, and a lot of teachers like you who are just doing things online, I can say this with 100% guarantee. You guys are better than 75% of all of us in the offline space. Matlab, there are no two doubts about it. In terms of relevance, in terms of pedagogy, in terms of consolidation, in terms of delivery, वो clarity over a period of years आ जाती है, right? And that's something that I have learned. I was a terrible teacher offline. I was decent, but if I compare myself to how I am today, I'm certainly a much better teacher. I have miles to go before I sleep, as you know, they say, but still, I was because offline क्या है ना, offline factory है. ऐसे फ्लाइट के शेड्यूल आते हैं कि आज 3 क्लास 4 क्लास ये मैंने पिछले 2 साल हर दिन अखबार पढ़ा है, आर्टिकल्स पढ़े हैं, ईपीडब्ल्यू की एक सिलेक्टेड आर्टिकल कभी रिलेवेंट लगी तो वो पढ़ ली. वो आप ऑनलाइन स्पेस में कर पाते हैं, ऑफलाइन में नहीं कर पाते. Offline will make you a more conceptually maybe a clear teacher because you're dealing in a live class perhaps, but it will not make you an academically strong teacher. That is for sure. So matlab, if a lot of people have this in their head कि भाई offline teaching में कुछ अलग ही होता, quality of teaching is the same. तो मतलब ये बहुत बड़ी बात है. lot of people don't acknowledge it कि भाई you know it is because the old gods have to preserve so that the new gods don't take over, right? And then there are people like us who are bats in a fight between animals and birds, right? So the old school, the old physical coaching will say, "Arey, online is a sham."
Yeah.
जब लेंस कार्ट आया तो चश्मे वालों ने क्या बोला, लेंस कार्ट चाइनीज है, लेकिन लेंस कार्ट ठीक है यार, मतलब हमारे सबके चश्मे वैसे आते हैं. So the old guard will always say that, you know, online teaching is not serious, the good students don't come in. What none of us realizes, even after an offline coaching, the child is going to sit alone in his or her or their room, shut the room and still study for a year. You can't get away with isolation. You can't get away with solitude. ये इस एग्जाम की रियलिटी है. नो डाउट आप ऑफलाइन में जाएंगे, आप क्लास में जाएंगे, अच्छा लगेगा, यू विल सी अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल, वो फिजिकलिटी है, व्हिच आई थिंक कैन बी रिप्लेस्ड through a test series or like, you know, you meet a bunch of people every month. You meet 10 people who are doing the same thing as you every month, you've solved the whole loneliness problem. If you see the same 10 people every day, you will hate them anyway, right? So तो वो है. तो like I want to also tell a lot of people who will be watching this is that is डर में मत रहो. I honestly think online teaching, at least it has made me a better teacher, and it is of course, you know, given a lot of you guys today, you guys are my competition. I have to work hard so that, you know, I am able to remain relevant and do good work, because you guys have a lot more drive and a lot more, insight into the current scheme of things, and we try to sort of work and sort of catch up to this. तो वो है मतलब
I
चीजें
think that just comes from the fact that कि we're a bit closer to the exam. कि आप जैसे बोल रहे हो कि मतलब people who've been teaching for 10-15 years are not as close to the exam. They're still teaching as per like the old thing. We are closer to the exam because we gave the exam just like last year, the year before it, and उस हिसाब से थोड़ा वो रहता है. But then again, I think given the kind of questions that you're asking, given the kind of जिस डेप्थ में आप जाके चीजों को एनालाइज कर रहे हो, जिस मतलब फ्लुएंसी से आपको सिलेबस एकदम मतलब छपा हुआ है दिमाग में, जैसे आप क्वेश्चंस देख रहे हो, एंड लाइक आई मेंशन्ड अ क्वेश्चन एंड यू न्यू इट. I don't think you'll face that relevancy problem anytime soon unless you like.
Yeah, but for you, that relevancy thing, no, Abhijit, is very, it's a very difficult thing to do, because
it takes effort. It takes,
it
I think there's this very very simple thing that you said that is applicable when you're a student, when you're applicable when you're an educator, which is being honest with yourself.
yeah.
कि as an educator you also have to be honest कि भैया ये चीज शायद इतना स्ट्रांग नहीं है, तो मतलब इसको स्ट्रांग करना पड़ेगा, मेहनत लगेगी अभी भी. Similarly as when you're a student, so not just कि कि ये सब्जेक्ट स्ट्रांग नहीं है या ये सेक्शन स्ट्रांग नहीं है, you've also got to be honest about yourself, honest with yourself about कि भाई क्यों कर रहे हो, क्यों हो इस स्पेस में. मतलब किसी ने बोल दिया था इसीलिए आ गए बस, या मतलब कुछ सोचा था, नहीं सोचा था तो सोचोगे कि मतलब. That is I think a very very fundamental question that people forget to ask sometimes.
Abhijit, the privilege that we as a collective generation have as opposed to our parents is that we can question what we are doing and why we are doing what we are doing. Our parents
We have the liberty I think to do that
privilege,
because क्योंकि
हम
हमारे पास वो I think मुझे याद है कि ऐसे दादाजी मेरे किसान थे, तो dad की generation में people got out from the village for the first time, got educated. मतलब so like now I am a second generation family जहाँ पे मतलब education is considered कि ये तो होगा ही. Now I have that space of कि भाई मतलब कुछ सोच सकते हैं, कर सकते हैं, क्या कर सकते हैं. But like in my dad's generation it was very simple. नौकरी पकड़ो, करते रहो कुछ 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 कुछ, ये नहीं छोड़ना, ये मतलब ये तो सोचना ही नहीं है कि मतलब क्यों कर रहे, क्या कर रहे, वो बाद में आएगी, पहले एक नौकरी पकड़ो. Which is why I think part of this is one of the biggest drives that a lot of people have for government service कि because I come from a family, पिताजी सरकारी नौकरी में थे, तो मतलब मेरा तो वो जनरली आ ही जाएगा because he will be like उनका बॉस कौन है, his boss is an IAS, so like मेरा बेटा IAS बनेगा. बट बिकॉज वो सरकारी नौकरी में थे तो मेरे पास ये थोड़ा स्पेस रहा कि मैं ये सवाल पूछ सकता हूँ, कि मेरे को ये पता है कि भाई अगर मैं ये सवाल पूछ रहा हूँ, अगर मैं इसके लिए थोड़ा समय ले रहा हूँ, 6 महीना साल भर ले रहा हूँ, मुझे रोटी की दिक्कत नहीं आएगी. उनके जमाने में शायद वो प्रॉब्लम आ जाती है.
करेक्ट.
कि भाई इतना ना सेविंग्स है, इतना ना बैंडविड्थ है कि भाई आप रुक के ये सवाल पूछ रहे हो अपने आप से कि भाई धंधा करे या ना करे या भाई क्या है, तो वो रोटी का सवाल आ जाएगा. तो जब वो उस पे आ गया तो फिर देन देयर इज नो क्वेश्चन, then you do must what you must to survive. But a lot of people still who are in a similar space as me, who have that bandwidth, who have that space to ask that question, are still not asking that question. क्यों? क्योंकि it is easier to follow something that somebody else has told you, which also connects back to the entire point of कि भाई आप रमेश सिंह एक चैप्टर दो चैप्टर पढ़ के ये डिसाइड कर पाओ कि मैं ये नहीं पढ़ूंगा, एंड आपको किसी ने बोल दिया कि आप यूपीएससी कर लो, आप थोड़ा टाइम करके ये बोल पाओ कि मैं नहीं करूंगा. दैट इज लाइक इट टेक्स अ लॉट ऑफ ऑनेस्टी कि मतलब यू हैव टू बी एबल टू फेस दैट फैक्ट कि भाई मतलब शायद द डिसीजन दैट आई एम टेकिंग मे नॉट वर्क आउट वेल, बट व्हाटएवर इट इज आई लिव विद इट.
Right. So incredibly true, Abhijit. We are fundamentally a very feudal society. और वो fundamental feudalism wants us to always strive for hierarchy. कि भाई कि regimented रहेगा. So that's of course a reason. But you're right कि मेरे से ये नहीं हो पा रहा है या मेरे से ये हो पा रहा है. ये it is true for students, it's true for teachers, it's true for everybody to see. I'll put it this way. I still don't know the answer to these questions. I don't think you do too either. I don't know anybody who does. मैं आपसे 2 सवाल पूछता हूँ. पहला ये कि should you be good at what you do or should you do what you want to do? ये मेरे there is not a single day Abhijit that I don't think about these 2 questions. क्या मैं वो करूं जो मुझे अच्छा लगता है या मैं वो करूं जो
मैं अच्छा हूं?
And the answer to both of these questions is civil services. The decision on whether you want to do this. A lot of students will be excellent civil servants. But do they really want to be? And if they want to be, why do they want to be? Thankfully, I've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of civil servants across multiple years, from new recruits to 10, 15 years, 20 years, and all that. The really good ones are the ones who love public administration, who love governance, who love problem solving. They love their job. It's not they are not. मतलब वो कहने की हम हमेशा कहते हैं कि पैसा, पावर, प्रेस्टीज 6 महीने बाद
उसके पीछे नहीं जा रहे वो लोग.
हाँ, and they are the ones who are really happy with it, and the ones who don't like the job are the ones who are unhappy with it.
And they're often the ones who are quitting nowadays. That's also increased. A lot of people in service are quitting. क्यों? क्योंकि गए थे किसी और मतलब समझ से, बट ये सवाल पूछा नहीं, तो वहां जाके तो पूछना पड़ गया. क्यों? क्योंकि सरकार में भी ऐसा तो नहीं है कि मतलब खाली बैठे रहोगे. Because that is also one perception कि मतलब सरकारी नौकरी लग गई और बस चिल है. नहीं होता भाई. इतना काम करवाएंगे, इतना रगड़ा मरवाएंगे कि मतलब फिर भी अगर अब तक नहीं पूछा था, सेलेक्ट भी हो गए, तो अब तो जरूर पूछ लोगे कि भैया क्यों, कहाँ, क्या क्या कर रहे हैं आप.
जैसे हम लोगों की फ्रेटर्निटी में हमारा यूपीएससी बबल है, कोचिंग बबल है. उन लोगों के काम में उनका डिस्ट्रिक्ट उनका बबल है. राइट. तो so they also understand that the work is tremendous. It's just too much. And from the students' point of view also, I still think most people don't have the privilege to ask themselves as to why they want to do this. And it's an aspirational sort of, upgrade in standard of living kind of thing. It's aspirational life. It's an aspirational exam. I understand that. But it's also very important. What we started out our discussion with is a very, very clear self-assessment. अब ये हमारे लिए भी अप्लाई होता है, स्टूडेंट्स के लिए भी अप्लाई होता है कि भाई मेरा एग्जाम अच्छे तरीके से नहीं निकला, इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि मैं एक बहुत खराब टीचर बनूंगा. इसका मतलब ये भी नहीं है कि कोई और बहुत खराब टीचर है, और इसका मतलब ये भी नहीं है जिसका एग्जाम निकला और वो टीचर है तो वो बहुत अच्छा टीचर है, और जिसका नहीं निकला वो खराब टीचर. सो ऑल परम्यूटेशन कॉम्बिनेशंस आर जस्ट वेरी फ्लॉड. Right. So and that's also true for students also. Ki bhai, and I'll give you a simple example. We can't name the political organizations because political ho jayega. Nowadays, you have political consultants. Political consulting organizations are really big now. There's, from the top 2 national parties to regional parties, bases in Delhi, Bangalore, Bombay. आपको पता है उनके ऑपरेशंस विंग में जो रिसर्च विंग है उसमें आधे यूपीएससी एस्पिरेंट्स है. who didn't make it. आप मीडिया हाउसेस में चले जाइए जो उनकी रिसर्च एडिटोरियल टीम है, half of them are ex UPSC aspirants. राइट. पब्लिक पॉलिसी में चले जाइए, आप थिंक टैंक्स में चले जाइए, half of them are ex UPSC aspirants. आप मार्केटिंग, ऑपरेशंस, एडवर्टाइजिंग में चले जाइए, एम्पिरिकल रिसर्च में चले जाइए, half of them किसी ना किसी ने 1-2 अटेम्प्ट लाइफ में पक्का दिए होंगे या कुछ तो दे ही देता है. तो so it's not as if people haven't really ventured out. Some people are happier outside than they would have been in the services. Some people might, sour grapes is there. It's an incredible job. There is no doubt, no two doubts about it. It's an incredible job. But even if it wasn't an incredible job, it still doesn't mean that your life starts and ends here. You should. And just as a final thought on this particular talk, it is very important to think about what kind of a job you are getting into, what is the work, and would you be wanting to do it? Once you figure that out, that okay, this is the kind of job I will be getting into, these are the work conditions, this is the work sort of growth channel. Once all of that is clear, once you're starting preparing for, once you started to prepare, this is a controversial statement, but I don't think you should think about the job then. then the exam must be this beautiful,
Priority. Yeah.
almost intoxicating puzzle about your life. पढ़ने में मजा आता है ना तो एग्जाम निकलता है. I think that, and then when most of your focus is on this कि यार ये मेरे से कैसे नहीं हो रहा, या फिर ये मुझे पता नहीं था कि अच्छा कि ला नीनो या एल नीना से इंडिया का ड्रॉट और मानसून अफेक्ट होगा, यार ये तो पता ही नहीं था मुझे कि वो सेमीकंडक्टर इंडस्ट्री की वजह से कार सप्लाई शॉर्टेज हो गई है, जिससे तो if knowledge is something which really gets you going, then this exam is for you.
Yeah, I think that
dark reality तो अभिजीत यही है ना, और इसको हम कितना ही छुपाएं. आप और मैं ये काम करते हैं क्योंकि हमारा एजुकेशन सिस्टम इस देश को फेल किया है, हम सबको फेल किया. अगर स्कूल कॉलेज में ढंग की पढ़ाई हो जाती तो आप और मैं ये नौकरी नहीं कर रहे थे, कुछ और कर रहे थे, राइट. तो ये हमारी रियलिटी है और इसको ठीक होने में थोड़ा समय लगेगा. सो लेट्स सी, यू नो.
Yeah, in that sense I think एक वो वाली भी चीज थी कि yes, मतलब we are producing a lot of engineers and a lot of times engineers जो हैं they're not becoming engineers because हमें engineering की नौकरी में जाना है, engineering core का करना है कुछ, but because of the perception कि भाई engineering कर लो उसके बाद कुछ भी नौकरी कर लेना. So now I understand that I'm a civil engineer by training. And India needs a lot of civil engineers over the next 20-30 years because that is the path that we are on. कि मतलब वो जो massive rapid growth आने वाली है, a lot of it will require good infrastructure development, and that is where civil engineers are required. But I'm not going in that direction, and a lot of people aren't. But that is what we're trained for, and that is the case with a lot of other professions as well. कि इतने सारे मैकेनिकल इंजीनियर्स को मैं जानता हूँ जब गूगल में नौकरी कर रहे हैं. मतलब ये एकदम ही कोई रिलेशन नहीं है. मतलब ये सॉफ्टवेयर है, ये एकदम प्रॉपर हार्डवेयर है.
राइट.
सो आई थिंक it's been a pleasure hosting you, and हम 1.5 घंटे से ऑलमोस्ट बातचीत कर रहे हैं. So like
really? Okay.
Yeah, and because I think you told me you have class, and let's just if you have any last comments that you'd like to leave with, and something to ponder that you'd like people to leave on, because you've given me a lot to ponder as well, and I think I really appreciate the fact that even though one could safely say that if you're an educator, you're like the top 1% of educators. You are somebody who's on top of the game. Like despite that fact, like you've been very humble, you've been very open about कि देखो ये misgivings हैं, ये problems हैं, ये चीजें दिक्कत दे रही हैं यहाँ पे. And that is again one quality which I have personally felt has always been present in people who find long-term success, is that they keep asking themselves these questions, right? And जो question आपने बताया था, should I do something that I'm good at, or should I do something that I like? And मतलब इसका ikigai से relation है. Ikigai, if you've heard the Japanese concept,
the blue colored
Yeah.
Japanese guide to happy living.
Exactly. There are 4 things that you need to figure out for yourself in life. Like, what is it that you're good at? What is it that you can be paid for? What is it that the society needs? Right? And then, like, what is it that you like? Right? Good at and like are 2 different things. कि मुझे पसंद maybe शायद video game खेलना हो सकता है, but like I may also be good at communicating. I may also be good at a number of other things which मतलब I may not like, but that's the difference. कि ये difference आपको सीखना पड़ेगा. And इन चारों चीजों के सेंटर पे जो आएगा, that is the Japanese guide to good living.
it is अभी एक बात बताता हूँ आपको. We've spoken very critically of our industry, and it is in fact a very difficult industry. But जो काम आप और मैं करते हैं as teachers, institute, platform, ये सब हटा दो. We are teachers, we are colleagues, we are teachers. I've taught at universities, I teach at academies, institutes here or there. It is a very, very overwhelming process. and that comes with a lot of responsibility. I do believe credibility is the only currency in education. कम पढ़ाओ, उतना पढ़ाओ जितना आता है, but उतना पढ़ाओ जो help करेगा.
Again, भाई overlap है दोनों चीजों का. What will help, what you know.
Exactly.
And in the middle, you have to be honest.
Exactly.
Because you have an overview of both, right?
And you know, if you really get into the nitty-gritties of our work, what we do, I get almost weekly emails of domestic abuse, drug addiction, porn addiction, anxiety, depression, suicide, relationship problems, parental issues, divorce issues. ये बच्चे हैं जिनकी जिंदगी में ये सब है, और जब ये सब है और वो नहीं पढ़ पा रहे हैं, and they reach out to you. Now, I'm not medically qualified to give them, you know, counseling advice, but I do arrange for as much as I can in whatever limited means that I can. But it then makes you understand कि हम जो कर रहे हैं वो बहुत बड़ा काम है, जो स्कूल और कॉलेज में टीचर्स नहीं कर पाए, institutions नहीं कर पाए, society, family नहीं कर पाए. You know, when I teach, for example, transgenders or sexuality or marital rape, almost every time I teach that topic, that day I will get a bunch of emails, either from students who tell me that, sir, thank you for, you know, talking about homosexuality. We are going to, you know, come out to our parents. And you know, that is the kind of work, that is the kind of impact that you have, but only till the point that it is relevant for the exam. Abhijit, you and I are existing today because of our students, right? वो नहीं है तो हम नहीं है, हम नहीं है लेकिन वो हैं. We are not indispensable for them, they are indispensable for us. Yep. And the students must also understand this, that कुछ भी हो जाए, एग्जाम निकालो नहीं निकालो, if work is something that you're not interested in, if it doesn't kick you, then you'll be unhappy. If work is something that drives you, a lot of people, work doesn't drive them, कि हमको काम करना है, our life is outside work. So the last line that I would probably say is, it may take two wings to fly, Abhijit, but it always takes a very hungry stomach to even attempt to do so. Right? So remember that. And
I think that's a ब्यूटीफुल लाइट टू एंड विद, कि जब तक वो ड्राइव नहीं आएगी, जब तक वो अंदर से कुछ नहीं निकलेगा, तो चाहे मतलब कितनी केपेबल हो, कुछ भी हो, nothing's happening.
And I'd like to also take a moment and thank you, Abhijit. I get, you know, a lot of people से बात करते हैं, so but it has been therapy for me to talk to you. That there were no, you know, कि ये नहीं बोल सकते, ये बोल सकते हैं, ये सही है, ये गलत है. Once this video gets out, we will all get a lot of phone calls about the sort of things that we've said, and it's fine, it's okay. But you know, the truth is what it is.
It is what it is, and I think more than anything else, it's rare to find somebody who's willing to talk this candidly. And like I have mentioned before, कि एक वो टॉपर टॉक वाली वो चीज मुझे मतलब इतना नहीं जचती. I want to talk to people who I personally find interesting, because and you have been one person who I have looked at from a distance for, like, probably because of the salt and pepper beard, because initially that's what I noticed. Like, हाँ, ये बंदा देखा हुआ है, पर देख रहा हूँ बहुत, ये है, सारे कहीं हैं. And then like I saw you, because I was a student then, I saw you like you know, become one of the legends. This is the guy you go to for politics. This is the guy who has that clarity. This is the guy who's just like he knows what's going on. And to be able to pick your brain, to be able to just talk to you so candidly about everything, it's been a pleasure. And thank you for giving me your time. And hopefully in the future we'll come up with something.
Keep doing this.
And we'll try and figure out what goes here. So thank you all for watching, and that'll be it.